Awesome. All right, I have started recording. Ramesh, take it away.
Hello.
Hi, Ramesh.
Hi, everyone. All right. Um, okay.
Go for it, mate.
All right. Let me just share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Great. So let's begin.
Yep.
So this is going to be a review of a Gartner action ticket that I solved, and I'm just going to go through everything in this ticket. So there's a lot to cover. So we're going to divide this presentation into three parts. I'm going to be talking about the problem, the solution, and finally, the learnings that I had. So let's begin with the problem. So this is a quick overview of the details in the ticket. So obviously the client is Gartner, and this ticket was particularly urgent and important because we were in the middle of a renewal conversation. I believe we still are, and getting actions to work was an important part of that. So let's quickly jump into the ticket. So this is our ticket. And from a quick glance, you can see that there's a lot going on over here. Um, so there's like a lot of things, even in the first comment, another problem's being mentioned. So the first thing that I did was to break it down into three broad issues. There were display ad action issues, there was this read more, learn more CMP class issue, and then there was a video click issue. So again, if we jump into the ticket, we can see that this portion over here, this is talking about the display ads. There are like 5 display ads. This portion talks about the read more and learn more CMP classes. And finally, Melissa's first comment is about the video clip issue. Now, if we go a little, we see the second comment, Gartner is looking into the learn more, read more issue. So that's something we don't need to worry about. So that means we're only taking care of 2 issues. So we're going to look at the video click issue a little later. And for now, we're only going to be focusing on the display ad actions. Right. So for the display ad actions, there are 5 types of display ads and 5 actions, of which 2 of them were working and 3 of them were not working. But even for the ones that were working, the setup felt brittle and fragile. Even a little change could disrupt it. So they also needed to be fixed later down the road. Okay, so how did I begin investigating the issue? So for this, I actually reached out to Rhythmbhai for some help because I needed a review of how Tag Manager worked. So turns out you can check everything in the versioning system. So if we go to Tag Manager, so in the Gartner instance, if we go to versions, we can see all the versions that have been published. 10 is the latest version that has been published by me, but when I was dealing with the ticket, this was the latest version, version 9. So this is what we're going to open.
I'm sorry, Ramesh, for interrupting
Yeah,
you, but what was the main problem with the setups? It wasn't
okay,
counting any actions, or
all right. So if we look in the ticket, they never really mentioned like whether the actions were being counted or not being counted. They just said that there's some issues over here. So even I did not know what the issues were. So I tested out all these actions on all these different pages, and for three of them, the tags were not firing. So clearly they were not being counted. For the other 2, the tags were firing, but the tag setup wasn't really appropriate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Oh.
So when you said like the text setup was not appropriate, you're gonna go into details on what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So this was it. So version 9, as you can see, this was published by Niels, and there were like 19 tags and 21 triggers. So all of our problem tags were here. We can see that here are our display ad tags: conference clicks, ebook clicks, insights, other clicks, webinar clicks, and so these are the 5 ones that we're dealing with, right? So these were the 5 setups as they were back then. So we had to investigate each of these tags. So we know that 3 were not firing, 2 were firing, and the failing tags use something called the article cover class. Now let's go into a little detail, right? So if I go into this comment over here, I can see the 3 tags were not working. So let's look at the tags that were not working. First one is the display ad other. Okay. So display ad other, this one.
Ramesh?
Yeah.
Bro, sorry to interrupt you again.
Yeah, no worries.
What's the difference between the versions? Like Niels, the one that Niels created was a version 9, and then the one that you worked with was a version 10, right?
Oh, this is simply the history. So version 9 was the published version. Version 10 is I made some edits and all the changes that were reflected, that's version 10.
Oh, basically session sort of like these are basically sessions or something.
So Musa,
Yeah,
it's
sort
basically
of.
it's basically like you do in the text edit, like you write something, you save it, and then you go back and
Okay.
edit again, then it creates a new version. So it's like
Okay. All right. Good. Got it, bro.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. So display at other clicks. So let's quickly look into the trigger. There's a lot going on, but let's ignore these 4 for now. Let's look at only the first one. So it matches CSS selector article cover and then A. So what we're trying to do, what this is trying to do is it's trying to find an anchor tag that is under some other tag that has the class of article cover. Now, let's go back, and this was the page. Let's open this page. This was the page. If we scroll down, so this was the display ad that they were talking about, the Thinkcast display ad. So this should be counted as a display ad other. However, if we look into the source code for this one, we open Chrome's DevTools, and now in the source code, we're going to try to find an element that has the display class of other. So we can quickly do that by pressing Command F and then searching for article cover. And as you can see, the article cover class is not present on this page. Because the article class is not present, this tag will not find. Because the class isn't present, this tag will not fire. So that's the reason why the display ad other clicks was not working.
Ramesh,
This was
question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just wondering, whoever set up these actions in the first place, I think it was Niels, right?
Right, yeah.
Any ideas as to where, from where exactly they came across this particular class?
Article cover class? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to go into it like a little later, like after 5 or so minutes.
Okay, gotcha. Cheers.
All right, yeah, okay. Now, if we look at some of the other actions, the other ones that were not working, you will notice that each of them had the article cover class. So thanks to Zoom, it's a little difficult to switch. Did I just stop sharing?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, sorry about that.
we can see it.
You're back on now.
All right, sorry about that.
No problem.
The display ad was not working. Let's see what others were not working. Go into the presentation. Sorry. So ebook and insights were not working as well. So if we look into ebooks, again, we see that the article cover class is there. And what was the other one? Insights. And again, we see that the article cover class is there. So it seems like the article cover class is at fault. Let's look at the ones that were working. So webinar was working. And no article cover class, great. Let's look at conference. No article cover class. No article cover class. So this tells us that the article cover class is at fault. So what could have happened? Two things could have happened. One is that either there was an article cover class previously, but it has since been removed, or someone just like, this class came out of nowhere. Well, turns out this class did not come out of nowhere, and it's actually present. So it's present on article pages. So this was a category page, category COVID-19. But let's just go into any article. Let's say we're going to this one. Let's just randomly go into an article page. All right. Okay, let's see if there's an ad over here. Right, so there's the Gartner ThinkCast ad right here. And now if we search for article cover, lo and behold, the article cover class is present. And if we look into the structure, so we have a div, underneath we have another div, and then we have an anchor tag. So there's a div with the article cover class, and underneath that there's an anchor tag. And this is for the display ad other click. Over here, the previous setup would have worked. The examples that they sent in the ticket, the tag was failing for that particular example. But for this article, for this click, the previous setup would have worked. Okay, so turns out there's two types of pages. There are category pages, such as the landing page, such as COVID-19, such as like all these pages. These are all category pages. And then we have article pages like the previous one. So in article pages, the article cover class is present. In the category pages, it's not present. So that's the source of the issue. That means our triggers would have worked for the article pages, but it would have failed on category pages. All right, so we've successfully investigated the source of the problem. Now we can move into coming up with a solution. So I would like to stop here and ask, does anyone have any questions so far? Hello?
No, I'm good.
I guess we are
All
good.
right. All right, so I'm moving forward and let's dive into the solution.
Mhm.
All right. So now we see that, again, what was our problem? There was this article cover class in
So,
the trigger,
actually,
and as a result,
hello, Ramesh. Sorry
yeah,
for interrupting, brother. So,
yeah, yeah,
I actually have a question. So, basically, you were saying
yeah,
that
yeah, sure.
the actions were working from the article page, but not from the category page, right?
That's right.
So, how did we determine that? I mean, how did
Okay.
they understand that
Way
this is not
I
working on the
tested it,
category page? You
the,
got to know when you tested it, right?
right, right. They actually did not specify anything. Like, again, if we go into the ticket, there is nothing written anywhere that says that it was working on the article page.
Okay,
It was not
it was
working on the
discovered
category
during the
page.
investigation process, right?
It
That
was discovered during the investigation
investigation
process. So
process.
initially, like if you look into my comments, initially I said that, hey, I think the article cover class is to blame. Then I posted an update later on where I discovered that this class is present on article pages, and therefore the triggers should work on article pages, but not on category pages.
Category pages. Okay.
Right. So what could be our possible solution then? Well, one solution could be we can simply ask the client to implement the article cover class on category pages. Now, this would work, but this would be a terrible solution for a couple of reasons. First is we should not expect the client to make changes on their end anyways when we're implementing actions. That's just bad practice. The second is the action setup should never be so specific that that you need to modify the existing site code for it to work. Then you just end up with a setup that is very brittle and that can break down whenever there is any minor code changes in the website. And since that's beyond our control, that can happen anytime and the actions would break down. That's definitely not what we want. So the other option we had was to modify the existing triggers such that the article cover class would not be used. And we should come up with a selector that satisfies a few criteria, namely, it should be present on both pages, on both types of pages, and it should be something that is similar across all display ad actions, because we want our selector to be very specific, but at the same time, it should be consistent. We should not be using a different type of selector for different related actions. We should try to use the same kind of selector because we want it to be simple and robust. How did we come up with a solution?
So you mean
This
same kind of
was,
Ramesh, sorry to interrupt. Same kind of
yeah,
selector in
no,
the
no, not
article page and both in the category page, right?
right. So it should be the same selector should be present on both article pages and category pages.
Okay.
And ideally, because all display ad actions seem to have the same HTML structure, it should also be the same across all display ad actions. And then we can specify individual ones by using a secondary selector. That's just better design. So how did we come up with this? This was a process of trial and error and discovery, and it actually took a lot of time, but this is how I did it. So we have a category page. So let me just investigate each of these, the structure of each of these display ads. So if we go into the structure, we see that there's a div. Underneath there's another div. Underneath there's another div. And then there's an anchor tag. Now, in the interest of time, I won't repeat this for every single display ad, but this is what I had to do, and you can take my word for it that the structure is practically the same for all of them. So if the structure is the same, then maybe we can use something in the structure for our selector. Now, there are a lot of classes available over here, and we could use a lot of different combinations. Let's do one example. So we have a class called call LG6, right? So we can do a call LG6, dot call LG6 followed by an anchor tag. This can be our selector. Would this work? Absolutely. Let's see, would this work for this display ad? Let's just check it out. Okay. Sure enough, we have a call LG6 over here. We have an anchor tag over here. So this will also work over here. So let's not go and check the other display ads. Just for a moment, let's consider, should we do this even if this were to work for every single display ad? This is a question I'm asking all of you. Should we do this, or should we try to go for a different selector? Hello.
Yep, we are here.
Hey, it's quiz time, guys. Got to answer.
Shouldn't we specify like, shouldn't we just conduct a few more checks and see like if the same selector is present across all the other, um, like all the other action items, and then
Yes.
like we might also have to take other parameters into perspective. Like the class might be the same, but what if like some other tags or some other elements are different? Like just asking.
Yes, absolutely. We should definitely check those out. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, this call LG6 selector with the div class is present across all the different display ad actions across both pages, and all of them have an anchor tag. Let's just say this is true. Then should we still go for this selector?
I mean, based on my limited experience, the tickets that I've worked thus far never contained a class that had like, how should I put it, such a weird value. Like if you take aside the JS add button class like out of the equation, I have never come across such a value. So I'm not really sure whether like going for such a class is going to ensure that the issue gets resolved for uh, all the items that have not been performing as per our expectations thus far. So I don't know like whether my answer is correct or not, but I would have my own fair share of concerns.
Okay, that's great. Anyone else?
Well, I'm not sure either, but I would give a shot just to check. I mean, if it's working for all pages or not. So like first I will give a shot and then I will decide like if we should go for it or not.
All right. So this is where anyone else? No one. Okay. All right.
Everyone is a bit shy, Shamiz. We haven't sat for quizzes in a while.
I'm
all
just
right.
trying to absorb
Well, the
as
quiz
much
isn't
information
graded,
as I can.
so there's nothing to be shy about.
All right. You were saying? Sorry.
Okay. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, this call LG6 class were present in every single one of these items on both types of pages, and we had an anchor tag. So we could have a class like, let me just test it. Let's just write it like this. So we could have a selector like this, call LG6 followed by an anchor tag, right? This could be our selector. And perhaps this would work. If this were to be present on all the pages, perhaps this would work. But yet, we should never do this.
Yep.
Why is that? Because the call LG6 class, this is a very generic class, and it's mostly defining a structure of the page. And there is a very, very strong chance that this call LG6 can appear elsewhere.
Okay.
Let's verify this by searching for the class. Again, I'm not sure if this will appear elsewhere, but it might. Okay, so it's only appearing here and here, only on these two places, so that's great. But again, if we go and look at call LGs, you see this is a class for structuring the content. To be specific, it's determining the size of the columns, right? And there can definitely be another column with the size of 6. So we should not use these kind of classes at all. So there are some others, right? There's call XS12, there's call MD6, there's call SM6. We should never, ever use these classes as a selector because these are simply not specific enough. We should never use them. All right, so that rules out these classes. There are other stuff we could do. We could go with something like content control. Okay, this looks specific enough. I don't expect this to be repeated elsewhere on the page. So content control. All right, so only appearing in these two places, that's great. And I like, judging from the type that this class is, this is not defining the structure or anything. It seems to be used to specify the display ad. Let's just look at it in the context of an article. Okay. So let's look at this article. Let's see some content control. Okay, great. So there are two actions on this page as well, two display ads, but these are two unique ads, and this is available for only these two. Okay, great. So this looks like a pretty specific class. It's available on two different types of pages. It's available on different display ads, right? So maybe we could use this. Underneath, there is an anchor tag. So maybe we could use this. Let's write this down. Followed by an anchor tag. Now, this actually would work, and there's really not much wrong with this. Obviously, you should do more testing, like test out all the different types of display ads and be 100% sure that this is not repeated elsewhere on the page. But from our initial investigation, this looks like it's going to work. Now, should we select this action? Again, quiz. Should we select this?
I was thinking, isn't it only appearing for like a couple of those items, like based on what I'm seeing on display here? I mean, if I revisit the requirement that you stated earlier, I guess we are just trying to go for like a common class that appears for all the pages, like all the category pages that we are looking at. But based on our like findings thus far, I think it's only appearing in two places. So like it might, I guess it might work like for a couple of those items, but I don't think it's applicable for everything that needs to be rectified or corrected.
Actually, it is. So what we're looking for is a selector that's only going to select a display ad and nothing else on the page. So it's only going to select a display ad, right? So what are display ads? These are display ads.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of them, right? Yeah, so that was my confusion.
Right. But if we look into this page, this is an article page, and there are only two display ads. There's one here, and there's one here. There's no other display ads.
Yep.
If we look at a category page, again, there's just these two display ads, and there's nothing here. So as long as we have a selector that is only selecting these two and nothing else, we're good to go. If it's selecting something else, then that's bad. If it's not selecting both of these, then that's bad as well. So we need something that selects only these two and nothing else on the page.
Gotcha.
And it should work across both category pages as well as article pages. So then this does seem to satisfy our concerns. So would this work? Again, quiz.
I think it should.
I think
but
it should.
Would you please mention any specific thing that we need to look out for? like any specific consideration before adding this content underscore control?
Right. So we should always try to look out for two things. Well, after we're done testing to make sure that this is working, one is we should never use a very generic class that has a high chance of being repeated elsewhere on the page. So something like a call LG6 or call XS12, stuff like that, we should always
Okay,
avoid. This
that
seems
makes sense.
specific enough, so it covers our first case. And so the answer to this quiz is yes, this would work. And if we look into the setup for the two actions that were working, so these two, display at webinar and display at conference. Let's go to version 9 setup. So display at webinar, let's just look into this one. And sure enough, they're using this content control A class, and it was working. So turns out this would work. However, we should not stop here. We should try to come up with the setup that is even more robust, that is even less vulnerable to changes in the code base. So we should try to do better. Again, this will work and we have come to an acceptable solution, but let's try to do better. We can try and see if we can find anything else. So let's see, we're always targeting this anchor tag, right? So why do we need to target any tags that wrap this anchor tag? Is there any class inside of this anchor tag that we can use? Turns out there are a few classes. There's a BTN, there's a GS add button, there's a call MD11, there's a learn more, and then there's a text center. Now, I won't go into the learn more because that's a different issue altogether. There is the BTN, there is a call MD11, there is text center. Again, a question, should we use these classes, BTN, call MD11, or text center?
So when it comes to using these classes, should we go ahead and do checks on whether these are included in the other ads?
Yes, we should
in order to make
absolutely do a check, but if we do a check for every single one of them, it's going to be an incredibly
tedious.
time-consuming process. Just from everything that we have learned so far, should we even consider tags like BTN, call MD11, and text center, these three?
I think not, because this might be occurring into other articles and might, collapse. Does that make sense?
Ramesh,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you
Yeah.
guys. So is there a repository of all the classes that could be used in a website or something, and a definition or a specification of all those classes, what they are used
Is there
for?
a directory of some sort?
Yeah.
Like what Adnan
Because
mentioned?
like most of us, except you, don't even have knowledge on website creation. So these classes are just like words for us. We don't actually understand what the function of these classes are in a website. So
okay, so the truth is there is no directory. There is a directory of standard HTML elements, but there's no directory for classes because classes are user defined. So a user can define a class in any way they
that
want,
makes sense.
right? So there is actually no standard directory. However, we can use some common sense here and see that whenever we come across a name, again, like a user can be using a common name to define a very, very specific class. If the developer did something like that, there's nothing we could do. Or they could use a very specific name to define something that's very generic and they repeat it all the time. Again, that's up to the person who's designing the website and we have no control over that. However, we can use some common sense, and whenever we come across names which don't seem too specific, right, which seem like that or related names appear elsewhere, then we can just considered them to be a pretty common class. Like this is more like a heuristic that we can use to trim down our options. And whenever we come across like a working option, we can just end there. We don't need to check every single one of these things, right? But let's just do a quick test like BTN, for example. Now, my hypothesis is that this BTN class will appear elsewhere on this page, not just for this button and this button. So let's check it out. Sure enough, it's appearing. It's targeting the search button, right?
Yep.
There you go. That alone rules it out. We cannot use something that's targeting something else on the page.
So in case we do use something like that, it might fire another action
it might
unintentionally.
fire another action on something that's completely unrelated. Like if we had used that selector, by pressing on the search button, we would have fired an action. We don't want that.
So that would cause discrepancies in the analytics.
Absolutely. It's probably going to result in over-reporting. And the reporting will obviously not be accurate. Right.
Okay, got it.
So coming back to that action, now, so I discovered this class, GS add button. Now, notice, like compared to something like a BTN or a text center, this feels a lot more specific. Again, I don't know if this is actually specific or not. By my initial hunches, that okay, this seems to be very specific to a display ad, and I don't expect this to be repeated anywhere else apart from a display ad. Again, that's just my hunch. Let's test it out. Okay, it's appearing for this this one, and that's it. And the good thing is it's only targeting this button, and our action should only be counted when someone clicks on this button or this button. Okay, great. Looks like we have something that's very specific.
So this means this is sorry, Rami, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So this means that the GS add button is reliable as opposed to the BTN
we need to test it out to be sure whether it's reliable or not. But
so we just tested and found that it's reliable, right?
Right. So the initial hunch is that this is probably reliable and it's probably specific enough for display ads. Let's test and see if it's present on article pages. GS add. All right. It's only targeting these two display ads. That's great. Now, at this point in time, we should look at different article pages. We should look at different display ad types. We should look at different category pages just to be sure. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to do that right now. And because I've already done this, and I'll say that this is the best selector that we have come up with so far. This probably works, but it's too generic and it's very brittle. This works. Nothing really wrong with it. We can do better, and this is our better version.
Ramesh, Rubai here. Quick question.
Yeah.
But across each of the anchor tags that you covered, I noticed that there were like separate URLs for all those sections. So when we are trying to specify those action criterias, do we need to also include the URLs as well? Like when we are trying to define the class, do we also need to explicitly specify that, okay, this particular section relates to this particular URL or something like that?
Oh, no. Class selectors have nothing to do with URLs. I mean, a developer could probably specify and make a relationship, but in general, classes have nothing to do with URLs.
Gotcha.
Classes simply define, classes simply augment an element so that's easier to select and make it unique from other elements on that page.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Thank you.
Right. Gotcha. But we should be using the URL for a couple of display ad action setups. We're going to go into it in just a moment. Sure. Right. So does anyone have any other questions so far related to this?
Ramesh, for the selector that you just mentioned, GS add underscore button, you said it was specific, right? So what do you mean by specific? Like whichever class is the is rare, or like whichever isn't repeated many times over the like this was repeated like twice, right? So did you by by specific, did you mean something like unique, or something which is like used very less? Is it something like that, or?
Not necessarily useless, but something that is unique. By specific, I mean that we should take a selector that is only and only applicable to a display ad and nothing else on the page. That because as we had seen, if it was like if it appeared elsewhere on the page, then the action could have been fired by doing something completely unrelated to what the action was supposed to track.
Okay.
Right? So by specific, I mean it's unique and applicable only to a display ad. Now, it appeared twice on that page because there were 2 display ads. If there was only 1 display ad, it should appear only once. If there are like 5 display ads, it should appear 5 times, but it should only appear for display ads and nothing else.
Okay.
All right. Any other question?
Okay, Ramesh, I wanted to ask you something specific regarding this.
Yeah.
So far you have been really helpful explaining these to us. Within my limited knowledge about HTML, I would actually like to know the protocol for taking care of a task like this. So far I have understood that we have to troubleshoot deeply and find out exactly which class selector fits our purpose. So would you be willing to share a doc, like after the training is over, like would you be sharing any doc with the steps mentioned specifically, so that once we are taking care of a task like this, it would be easier for us to get through?
Yeah, sure. I don't have any such doc prepared, but I can definitely prepare one and send it out.
Absolutely. In case you need my help, I can contribute into making that doc.
All right, that would be great. Yeah, yeah, we can do that like after the meeting's over.
Sure thing.
All right. Okay, great. Any other question?
Nope. I think we should proceed on to the next section.
All right. Okay. So we have that. Right. So where were we? All right. So this is our perfect trigger choice, right? An anchor tag with the class GSAdd button. Now we need to implement this solution. So we're going to go into Tag Manager. I assume everyone should be able knows how to do this, but we basically like go into tags. We go into workspace, then we go into tags, then we select a tag that we want to change. So let's say ebook clicks. We go into the trigger, and then we click on the edit button, and we match the CSS selector, and over here we type in our CSS selector, which we know to be the GSAdd button. I have repeated this same CSS selector for every single display ad. All right. So now we're selecting all of these tags should fire whenever a display ad is clicked. But how do we differentiate among different types of display ads? So how do we differentiate an ebook click to something like, say, so something like an ebook click to a webinar click? How do we differentiate that? So next we have to go to a second level of selectors. So if we go into the current setup, okay, let's compare the previous setup to the current setup. So this was the previous setup for ebook clicks. All right. We see that they were targeting the article cover followed by an anchor tag. We have replaced that with simply the GSAdd button class. Great. For the second selector, they were using regex to capture anything that ends with double OK. Now, remember Now, this setup also has an issue. This will work for ebook, but this will also work for Nook, for book, for hook, for whatever ends with double OK, right? So that does not look like a very stable setup, because they might have something different that ends with double OK, which is not an ebook, and they definitely don't want it to be counted as an ebook, provided that the first selector matches for both of them. So we should try to be more specific. So what I've done over here is we're using regex to capture the whole string ebook, and that's it, just ebook. As long as the click text is ebook, case insensitive, then we're good. So does this make sense to everyone?
Why did they just use double OK? They could have used it like the total full string, like.
Yeah, that's what I did. I used the full string. I have no idea why they used star double
That's what
OK.
I'm asking. I mean,
I
like,
was actually
why
trying to
just
figure out the logic behind that.
I do not know that.
Ramesh, could you
Yeah?
briefly tell us about the regex selector, like what it signifies?
So regex itself
means
is
regular expression, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So regular expression, it's a syntax for selecting different kinds of text. It's actually fairly complicated. Even I have no idea how to do that without referring to a guide. So there are, I'll actually find a good guide and send it over to everyone.
All right. Does it refer to a string value, like?
Right, it always refers to a string.
All right.
It matches a string.
Okay.
Ramesh, I had a question.
Yeah?
Would it be possible to do without a regular expression in this case? When it comes to ebook
would it
click?
be possible? Let's look at our options. Yeah, we could do is click text equals or starts with ebook equals ebook. Yeah, we could have done without a regex, but again, there are many ways to do the same thing.
Sounds cooler.
No,
like,
not
I wanted to know why the regular
So if
expression
you
was
look at
used
one
in this
thing,
case.
so the regular expression is the only one that ignores the case. So this will work for ebook as it's written over here.
Okay.
It will also work for ebook as written like this, and it will also work with ebook written with a capital E. If we use the other ones, for example, equals or starts with, then we'd have to, it wouldn't work for all three of these cases.
Okay.
There's a normal matches regex as well.
Yeah, so if we use normal regex, again, it will take the case into account. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Ramesh, I had a question. So we are looking for, in case the word ebook pops up anywhere else in the article, in the text of an article, would that be affected?
No, it won't, because our first selector is that it has to be anything. It has to be a tag that has the GS add button class attached to it. And within that tag, it needs to contain a text that matches ebook.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So if the ebook appears elsewhere, it won't match the first condition. So the tag won't get fired.
Okay, understood.
All right. Anyone else? Any questions?
No, sir. All good.
All right. Okay,
all good.
So, all right. So we can look into other, let's look at webinar because it's pretty similar. So the webinar one was pretty similar. Right. Again, as you can see, we're just matching with webinar. Previously, let's look at the previous setup for webinar. So the previous setup again used this star webinar. So again, it would work, but it would match anything that ends with webinar. So no idea why it's more general, so I just made it a little more specific.
What a bummer. Yeah.
All right, so that's webinar. That's all right. The others is a little complicated. Let's go to insights. This one's a little bit more complicated than the others. So insights is where the URL is taken into account. So for insights, we have, again, the second selector is text center A. Again, this is very generic and we should never use something like this. The first selector, though, it's using the article cover that we replaced, but it's actually using two types of selectors. It's using a class selector as well as an element selector, which has an href that contains insights. So this syntax, it's using regex within a class selector. So it's a little complicated. And it's possible to break it down into separate selectors, but this is also quite efficient. So I actually did something very similar. So again, I have that same anchor tag with an href containing any URL that contains the /insights link, and we're attaching it to a GS add button. Let's see how this actually looks. So these don't look like okay, yeah, view resources over here. So if we look into this view resources thing, we see that the URL for this, the anchor tag, the URL that it's going to take you to is from the Gartner Insights page. So this should be counted as an insights click. And the only way to determine this is not through what's written over here, but through the URL. That's why we're using this selector for selecting the URL. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, is everyone clear?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Ramesh, quick.
Yeah.
Before we move on, this particular condition, it's only going to apply for URLs that contains the insights word, right? Like, are there any URLs that doesn't contain this word? Like, have you come across any?
That does not contain this word?
Yep. Like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I haven't noticed, so just wanted to get it double checked.
Yeah.
Ramesh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay. This is so.
Okay,
yeah, I can hear you. It's just so difficult to switch tabs when Zoom's open.
I mean, we can follow up later. Let's just like cover everything first.
Okay.
Thanks for responding.
Yeah. Tausif, you had a question.
Tausif, go ahead. Yep.
Oh, so I want to ask. What if we included something after href that is not front slash insights or something else, some other word, some other snippet of a URL? Would that be applicable too? Okay.
Yes, that would be applicable, but it would match with something completely different. It depends on what we want to match.
Not relevant to this.
Not relevant to this, no.
Okay, got it.
Because if we use something, let's say, all right, wait, let's see, I think, okay. So this one, if you notice, this has a different URL.
Yep.
See, Rubai, you can see that this URL is different. It's like conference, sales, something. It's not
this was my
insights.
exact question. Thanks for showing.
Right. So for this particular one, obviously that insights match will not work, and we'll have to, like, if we're trying to match with URLs, we'll have to use something else, which we're going to look at right now. So for conference clicks, now conference clicks actually has two triggers, not one, but they're pretty much the same thing. And they're similar to the URL. So again, what I'm doing over here is I'm matching any URL that contains the word calendar.
Yep, got it.
And it's a GS add button, of course. let's see how it was done previously. I don't think there was much changes to be made here. Right. So again, it's the same thing, but they're using different selectors. I'm using the GSAD class selector. Now for the conference class, they're using any URL that contains the word conference. I am sticking to that same convention. Anything that contains conference, and of course the class that I'm using for selecting display actions. Okay, any questions?
No, I'm good.
All right, great. So now we're left with our final tag, which is the other clicks. So for the other clicks, what we have to do is we're going to count this, provided it does not match with any of the other 4. So let's see how I've done it. So it's a GS ad button. That tells us that this is a display ad, but it must not match with any of the other 4 actions. So it cannot contain the word ebook or webinar. It cannot have a link that links to conference or links to insights or links to calendar. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I didn't quite get this. Could you please explain?
Sure,
So
absolutely.
Is it like Ramesh? Is it like anything except these 4, right?
Right. Anything except this 4. Anything except like the other tags that we have discussed. So what we're doing over here is, for example, the podcast. I think this was it. Okay, so these actions are dynamic. They keep on changing. These ads are dynamic. They keep on changing. So you have to refresh them a few times to find the one that you're looking for. But remember, we had that podcast, right? This one, Gartner Thinkcast, right? Now, this should be counted as other because it's not a webinar. It's not an ebook. It does not link to insights.
Right.
And it does not link to a calendar or conference. Let's check the URL over here. See, the URL is like podcasts. And so how do we know that this is a display ad? We know that this is a display ad using this GS ad button, right?
Right.
Hello?
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, Ramesh,
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Ramesh, we can hear you.
Apparently, Ramesh can't hear us.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
So that's what. Okay. Okay, great. I think there was a disconnect in the internet or something.
Yep.
So that's what we have done at the first. We're matching that this is a display ad. All right. So
Yes.
we know
Ramesh,
that this
one
is
question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I noticed that for conference, there is no slash, like for insights and calendar, we are looking for a URL, but for conference, it's different.
Because I think the structure of the URL was a little different. Okay, so over here we're using the slash conference. Actually, we could do with both, you know. We could do a slash conference, then it's only going to match a URL that contains that slash conference. If we're just using the word conference, it could match with any URL that contains the word conference, and not in form of like slash conference, but rather Gartner. So over here, Gartner dash conference dash something. So I believe there was a URL like this somewhere, like I have to search for it. It just came up from searching. So that's why I did not like put in the slash, but rather just conference.
But both are applicable here, right?
Both are applicable. Yeah, you could have gone with either one.
All right.
As long as we make it a unique identifier, then it's gonna work, right?
Right. Absolutely. And for the others, we're matching with click element is CSS, the GS ad button to identify that this is a display ad. And now we're doing the opposite of the other selectors. So we're making sure that it does not contain the word ebook or webinar. It does not contain a link to conference. It does not contain a link to insights. It does not contain a link to calendar. If it does not contain any of these things, then it's something else. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Rubai bhai,
Yep, it
does
makes
that
sense.
clear your confusion?
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're done with the setup for all 5 actions. Now what do we do? Now, the important thing is we're done with the setup, but we must test it out and we must test it thoroughly. We must make sure that we're testing on 2 different types of pages, category pages as well as article pages. We need to ensure that we're testing different types of display ads on different articles, on different categories. We need to test it out thoroughly. How do we do the tests? We use the Tag Manager preview function. So you can see that I'm already in preview mode. You can just access preview mode by clicking on this button. If you've made any changes, then in workspace changes, you're going to see all these changes. And when you click preview, these actions will no longer be counted from my computer. And I can check like if a tag is working or not. So how do we check that? With our tag manager open, we just click on this. Our expectation is that this should be counted as a conference click, or you don't need to know what happened. And sure enough, display at conference click, this tag has fired. That's great. Looks like it's working. Let's check out something else. So follow today. This is like showcase something. So this should be counted as other. Let's test it out. Yep, it's counting as another click. This should also count as another click. Let's test it out. And see, this has fired 2 times. The second one was for this, for the ThinkCast ad. Let's look at a webinar. This should be counted as a webinar. So let's click it. Yep, it's counting as a webinar. Then this one, this should be counted as insights. Let's okay, I actually was testing on this page for a while, so let's just refresh. But you guys get the idea, right? Like how to go about testing?
Yep.
We do.
All right. So that's what I've done. Let's just test this one more time. See, the insights click, it's working. Great. So again, we should test this out a lot more than what I've done over here. After every change that you make, if something's not working, test it, test it, test it. Once you're done with all the testing, have someone review these actions, and then you're good to finish. So now we're done with the solution. Does anyone have any questions?
Ramesh, could you tell us about any specific things that we need to watch out for while testing?
Right. If an action is not firing, then definitely something's wrong with your trigger. You should also try to do some other things on the page, like click elsewhere, like click on the search button, click here and here to see if your tag is being fired erroneously. This should not happen because we've already removed that possibility while we were selecting our classes. So so we already took care of that step. But again, like you can do that for additional safety and additional tests.
Sorry to, but I think like you bring up a good point. I guess like some of these details we might not remember down the line. So I guess it would be great if you could just create a doc and lay out all the best practices when it comes to setting up actions, and see that you are the expert here. Like you and I or someone else can work in tandem and like get it done. So
I'll definitely prepare a doc.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So we're done. We're actually done with the whole display ad setup thing. Now, if we go back into our original problems, we're done with the display ad. The read more, learn more class we're not worrying about, but we still have to look into the video click thing. Okay, I think we're already over time. So shall I go into this or shall I move on to
Yeah,
the
I
learning?
mean, I think all of us are available, barring Victoria, but she seems like she's still here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's just one more thing left to cover, so I guess we
All
should
right.
give it a try.
Okay. So let's go into the video click thing. So what was the problem? The problem was that there was this, so there was a page that had no videos, but yet a video click action was being counted for that page. Just a couple of actions, just a couple of clicks.
Okay.
So what do we do? We have to verify if the video click tag was fired in the first place, because Melissa said that, but we don't know if it actually happened. We need to verify that. We need to investigate the video click tag setup, and we need to test out the video click tag. So these are the three things that we need to do. Let's do that. So how do we verify? So what was that page? Let's cancel all these stuff. And let's just go to that page. Okay. So this was the page. Let's load this. As you can see, this page does not have any videos.
Yep.
Right? But the video click tag was still, for some reason, fired on this page, which is odd. Now, since I already have Tag Manager opened up, we can see if any tag is being fired automatically. And we can see that the video views click is not being fired. So, okay, what gives? Let's see if it was fired previously. We can do that from Google Analytics. To see if a tag was fired, first we go to conversions, we go to goals, we can go to overview, right? Now, the only goal that we're interested in is the video views. We can select it from here, goal option. And now we can see all the URLs that this tag fired on. So let's view the full report by clicking here. Okay. What was the URL? 10 must-read business books, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's search for that. 10 must-read.
It's number 10, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so this is it. 10 must-read video. And we can see that the tag was fired a few times, right?
Yeah.
But like just once, and this really does not make sense. Like there's no reason why it should be fired, but it was fired. Were these the only views that the page received? Let's check how many page views the page has received. We can do that by going into behavior, going into site content, all pages. Let's just wait for this to load. This reminds me of the CMP. I thought Google could do a better job, but looks like they
We can
can't.
relate to it. It's been affecting all of us as well.
Seems like all of us are suffering from connectivity issues.
Yeah, I think it's due to our national infrastructure or something. I don't know. Could be.
Most likely. And since everyone's working from home, all these home ISPs are maxed out.
Yep.
All right. Let's search. Okay. It's the same URL, but with additional query parameters. But we don't need to be concerned about that. The important thing over here is we have like 6,000 plus page views, but we only had like 5 clicks. So what gives? Well, what's going on over here? It's definitely not happening automatically. And there is no video. So if there's no video, you can't possibly click somewhere and like expect that to happen. Let's look at the tag setup. And I haven't actually changed anything, but let's look at version 9. So video view crits. Okay, let's look at the trigger.
Okay.
So we can see that it's whenever we click on a YouTube video, when it starts playing, then this tag will fire. But there is no YouTube video. So
Yeah.
honestly, I don't see anything wrong with the setup. And I could not detect anything in Google Analytics. So I gave up and I reached out to Jeremiah for help. So I pasted everything and I said that I have no idea what's going on. Like, why did it happen? Jeremiah, could you help me out? Jeremiah also is like, maybe there was some embedding at one point. Anyway, we can't detect it now. So we can't find out.
Damn. What kind of music are we dealing with here?
So that turned out to be a little anticlimactic, but that's just how it is. So we could not get to the root of the issue. I guess we can simply ignore it. And besides, 5 clicks, like if you're tracking like hundreds of clicks, 5, it's a very small anomaly. So I think we can like rule it out as a, I don't know, a natural disaster or something. Right, so that's the problems, that's the solution. Now we're going to talk about the learnings. It's the learning. Right. First of all, ask for help. Don't try to do it alone. Ask for help. There are so many people out there who are willing to help. If they're not willing to help, use Bonusly, bribe them. You have 100 points, that's your ammunition. Use it well. So a few people who helped me out a lot, Rubai Bhai, Jeremiah, and Rhythm Bhai. So even though Rhythm was not involved in the ticket in any way, like before I did all the investigation, I did reach out to him for some help, just trying to be sure how Tag Manager worked and everything. So don't try to do it alone, ask for help. Next. Take your time. These things really take time. And when you have like a lot of other tickets coming in, it can be difficult. If need be, ask your teammate to cover you for a couple of tickets and focus on working on the action. Because you really need to focus on this one thing. And if you try to do too many things at once, you can jumble up. You really need to have a clear head and you need to take your time to do it. There's no point in rushing. Always test your assumptions. Every time you make a change, go to Tag Manager, use the preview mode, and just play around on the side. Just try it out on different types of pages, different types of content, and see what's happening. Even if it's not working, you're probably going to learn a lot from the experience, and that's going to help you prepare you for the next actions ticket. For example, you guys asked me like, how do we know that whether this is a generic tag or if it's a very specific tag? Sometimes it probably is something that just comes with experience. And if you have an assumption, test it out. The more times you test out your assumptions, the better you're going to get at predicting correct assumptions, like having correct assumptions. And you're going to also build natural heuristics for solving actions related problems.
Yes, sir. Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Do not publish your changes. Preview your changes and have someone else review them. Even if you're the absolute expert and you know what you're doing, it never hurts to get a second pair of eyes to look over what you have done. Sometimes you might make a mistake and you might not detect it, but someone else might be able to detect it. So always at least get another person to review it before you publish, because there's a risk when you publish an action. When a data has been collected, that data can never be removed. You cannot correct historical data. That wrong data will be there forever. So it's always best to review everything before you publish. Finally, always keep all parties informed as much as possible, even if you don't have a lot of updates, even if it's something minor, even if it's just one tag that you've tested and you think that this might be a problem, but you don't know whether that's a problem or not. You don't know for sure, but still, at least, like, still keep everyone updated and informed. That way, the point of contacts with the client, the AM or the CSM, they can talk with clients, they can handle client queries better, and it just helps to keep everyone on the same page. So inform others frequently of what you're doing, and yeah, that's it. So if any of you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Awesome. Thanks,
I'm
Ramesh.
good, Ramesh.
It's been one heck of a session. Thanks so much for taking the time
Thanks, Ramesh.
and going
Thank
through.
you, Ramesh.
It's
Yeah, I'm glad I could help. Thanks everyone for the opportunity.
No, I think it will help us when we will work on our tickets action tickets that will be assigned to us.
Yeah, I mean, this has already been really helpful for me because
Mm-hmm.
I figured out some of the common mistakes that I committed in a couple
Mm-hmm.
of tickets that I was working, like during my initial tries, and Rhythmby had to jump in and rectify those mistakes for me. This just clarified everything for me big time. So thanks so much, mate.
I'm glad I could help. Thanks